Cruz shows a fresh layer of soft spot to her new friend Aaliyah in the new episode of Paramount's Special Ops, Lioness. Cruz and Joe's crew had just finished off a gang of 6 terrorists in the last episode, and now Cruz was on her way to Aaliyah's for the weekend. This episode digs into Cruz's mind and the cold vibe of the place where she has to work. The happenings of Special Ops, Lioness Episode 6 are explained here. What happened in Special Ops, Lioness Episode 6? Caitlin's husband, Errol Meade, was a big shot because of his know-how and connections inside the system. Caitlin had been called up to the White House for an urgent meet and was curious as to what she might hope to get done there. Because of the touchy subject of their jobs, both Caitlin and Errol were hesitant to spill details about their work life with each other, even though they shared a home. Errol told Caitlin, however, that Secretary of State Edwin Mullins had cancelled his trip to Poland. Caitlin figured out they couldn't walk away so easily this time because they had gone too far. Even more surprisingly, Caitlin did not let out to her husband that they had planted the mole at Cadre Petrol, but that they had been in contact with him. Caitlin does not spill who it is of the big shot group for which this mole worked. Joe, Caitlin, Kyle, and Byron walked into the meeting to find Mullins and his 2 other partners already there, ready to ask them. The folks in San Antonio asked them about the pulling out and the latest happenings there. Joe and her crew had only made it this far because they had scored a big win by eliminating the danger from terrorists to the city. Only by doing their task would they be able to escape the jam caused by Kyle and Joe, and Byron was aware of this. Byron was an old hand of many battles, and he knew this day would come. Mullins told Kyle to leave and then asked about the situation of the Amrohai case as a whole. Mullins was aware of it and interested in learning more about the stakes and Joe's and her team's game plan for completing the job. Joe let them know that they had traveled farther than ever before and that if all went according to plan, Amrohai would be dead very soon. Joe let out this knowledge to Cruz in Episode 6 of Special Ops, Lioness, when they discussed the chance that Cruz could not survive the operation. If they were successful in their aim, Joe would have to live with the bad feeling of having pushed a little girl to her death. Joe told Mullins that they intended to kill the terrorist during Aaliyah's wedding by firing a missile at the place. Since these happenings had happened, Mullins made it plain that the team needed to tell straight to them and keep them in the loop. Yellow Jacket was the code name given to Joe's job, and Mabel was the go-ahead code to fire the missile. The losing freedom upset Joe, Caitlin, and Byron, but they realized things might have been far worse. At the same time, a sudden problem popped up when 3 thieves out of nowhere burst into the home where Joe's men were hiding out. They made the worst mistake of their life, and Joe's men quickly had them in prison. Joe asked that Kyle handle the situation and make sure that the truth about who her guy was never let out. After a busy day, Kyle sorted out the conflict, and Joe went back to her house. Joe had warned Cruz to be careful since Aaliyah was interested in getting to know her on a personal level. Once inside, Cruz had to rely on her own gut feeling and do what she thought was best for the job, despite Joe's best advice. Aaliyah decided to take a full day off to pamper Joe and spend time with her. Joe suggested Aaliyah that if she felt so stuck, she could tell her parents that she didn't want to be married while they watched a couple of movies together. Aaliyah said that such happenings were uncommon in her own country. She said that if she answered no, it would be the same for both families and that she still wouldn't be left alone to go after her own interests. That's probably why Aaliyah planned so many unrelated things. She was afraid she wouldn't be able to get anything done after she got married. Are Aaliyah and Cruz in love? There was a certain spark between Aaliyah and Cruz as they lay next to each other on the bed. Aaliyah seemed to have true feelings for Cruz, and Cruz seemed to return them. Aaliyah told Cruz the next day that Mallorca had been picked as the wedding location after getting a phone call from her mom. In her high spirits, Aaliyah leaned in for an out-of-nowhere kiss with Cruz. It had been too long, and the 2 females had a moment of big hug. The tough situation for Aaliyah was made worse when Cruz suddenly stopped. Cruz was left with inner conflict at the end of Special Ops, Lioness Episode 6. She for a sec lost sight of her purpose. Even though she wasn't open about it, she had a soft spot for Aaliyah. No one else seemed to care about her as much as Aaliyah did these last several days. We have no doubt that Cruz will make every effort to make sure that Aaliyah does not die in that place. Cruz, who had never felt love before, pushed her to her death because she felt she had no choice. From now on, Cruz will face challenges, and she will need to carefully pick the sort of future she pictures for herself. In the next episodes, we'll find out whether Cruz's feelings for Aaliyah distract her from her aim and if Joe catches a glimpse of her inner chaos.